Today is a good day for America. It's finally one of my least favorite politicians of all time. Nancy Pelosi is not seeking re-election. She is now 85 years old, and she's been in Congress for 40 years. That's basically half of every person's lifetime, as the average life expectancy in the U.S. is 72 years old, and that's a really long time to be in power. And that's particularly why I hate her, because not hate, but dislike her so much. First of all, she's a Democrat. Obviously, I'm a Republican and a conservative, so I dislike her for that reason. Another reason is the fact that she's been in there for so long. No politician should be sitting there in Congress for 40 years in power. That's an extremely long time to be in power, and they must have massive political influence within our government. And they have probably a lot of excise influence that shouldn't be there in the first place. And I actually think we should have term limits because of that reason. 40 years is anyone else in a foreign country. If, like, for example, let's say the president was there for 40 years, you'd get allegations of that president being a dictator. And I think, but you don't get that for like career politicians that shouldn't be in there for 40 years. Where term limits will solve that issue in the first place. We don't want career politicians, because career politicians, they don't actually understand, first of all, what the average person wants. And additionally, because they're so entrenched, and because they're in there for so long, they become entrenched in the political system, and they actively slow down the political process. So I am extremely glad that Nancy Pelosi is gone. And I wish we actually had term limits so we wouldn't have career politicians like her. And in fact, I think we have like career politicians in both parties, and I really wish they were gone. For example, it's not just Republicans or Democrats that have career politicians. Look at this list. This is the list of present senators and House of Representative members that are in Congress. Look at that list. There's people that have been in there for 50 years. And they're in there in 1975. Why is that person still in Congress? They don't understand the issues of current Americans that are around the age that are in the prime age of their life. They don't understand the issues of the young people today. They also don't understand the issues of even a smaller portion of even some of the older people, like people that are 40 or 50. They don't understand it because they're like, they were elected like when there was a time of a booming economy, and we had some of the largest increase in income and wealth in the entire world. So they don't understand the issues that Americans face today, and that's mainly because they're so old. Additionally, for example, some of these are like big names, like Chuck Schumer. He's like one of the major Democrats. He's been like the Senate Majority Leader for like a long time. And then there's same thing with Mitch McConnell, too. And that just shows that they've become so, because they've been in there for so long, they've had that so much power in there. You don't get new leaders. And we need the new ideas, as the old ways aren't working. Also, another issue with the fact that they're so old and they've become so entrenched in the political system is corruption. You can easily see that, especially with Nancy Pelosi. You can see how her net worth skyrocketed. For example, let's look at her net worth. Let's see. Net worth $230 million. That is a lot of money, especially when you're only getting like a yearly salary of $200,000 a year, and I bet on average she got even less because they originally it's like less for as they increase the income for Congress members over time. She probably had even less than from when she was she had even less of an income from when she was like younger in the in Congress, and now she has a net worth of 230 million. I don't see a really effective way of getting that net worth from that income. So there's multiple things she's probably done to actually increase her wealth, and it's probably a lot of corruption. First of all, because they'll probably give her some kickbacks or whatever. Another, as major corporations probably give her some kickbacks, as she was the Speaker of the House for a long time, particularly under the Biden administration. I think she was also under the Obama administration too, and maybe during Trump's term when they had the control of the House. But she was still, she had a massive political power, and she stayed in there forever, and that makes it so it's easier to do corruption. As you have more connections with people in power, you can easily get more information. You also have more connections with other vested interests outside of like Congress and everything. So I strongly dislike that that there's so much corruption. Honestly, I think there should also, along with like the term limit stuff, there should also be some sort of like, I thought of this idea, some sort of like fund where Congress members just put their money in. Like, for example, since we don't want to take like all the rights away from like investing, because that's actually how you grow wealth with compound interest. So we don't want to take that away. But I think whenever like a Congress member wants to invest in like the stock market or in a company, in like the stock market at all, I think they should put it into like a giant like a fund. And it just tracks basically the S&P 500 or the Russell 3000 or a multitude of stocks. That's not just like one company. The reason I think we should focus more on like Russell 3000 instead of like S&P 500 is because the S&P 500 is still has like a heavy amount of money into like some of the largest companies. Where if you have like a Russell 3000, you have some of the smaller cap companies. And that will actually improve, like, that will make it so Congress doesn't just pass laws that benefit the top companies, because they also need to keep track of, like, the smaller companies in the index. That, smaller companies in the index, where compared to the S&P 500, there's less of those smaller companies. So, that's another idea for, like, how to reduce corruption in there. But overall, I'm just really glad that Nancy Pelosi's out, because she's obviously one of the most corrupt politicians that was in Congress, and she was also one of the longest serving ones. So additionally, she was Democrat, which I dislike, but still, I'm glad she's finally out, because to be honest, the left was protesting no kings like a while back. I think that was, I forgot which date it was. I think it was the 18th of November. 18th of November? Yeah. But to be honest, Trump's not the king here. Someone that's in power for 40 years, they're more likely to have more political power, they're more likely to be entrenched, and they're more likely to be kings. And the ones, they're more likely to be the actual ones controlling the power. So I'm very glad Nancy Pelosi's out. Oh, and back to the point I was making about term limits. I actually think there's another reason for term limits. It's also because you have these massive entrenched politicians that have been there for however long. And the thing is, when people like go to vote for like their local senators and House of Representatives members, they always just, a lot of people just have like a bias towards the incumbency, and they don't actually look at whether that politicians actually voted for them. So that's another thing. If we have like term limits and everything, more people will have to actually research what their politicians doing, instead of just voting for the same incumbent over and over and over again. So this will actually also help with diversity of ideas and diversity of ideas in the Congress, because then we'll have more people, more and different people in there constantly. So more diversity of ideas, more likely to be better laws passed that actually fit the times that we're in. Um, Additionally, with term limits, it will what is it? It's gonna say. Well, it gets new ideas, and another thing is that it's it allows for more political competition, basically. Because if you have one area, like one district that's like major left wing, that's more left wing, and you have someone that's you have someone that's not that has a term limit, it causes there to be it causes the removal of an entrenched bias towards the incumbency, which that will allow for people that have not like that are from like the opposite party to actually vote once to actually what is it get into Congress more, because you don't have to face a massive incumbency bias that one person has. So it will actually respond more to voters too, because you don't have someone that's in there constantly just staying in there because they know that they're always going to win because they're the incumbent, and there's no reason to get them out. So it's there's no like major incentive for the major political parties to get them out of the their position in the Congress. So term limits, we absolutely need them. Now the question is, where should we establish those term limits? Now I'm thinking for like term limits, which for like senators, since they have 6-year terms, you could do like 2 6-year terms, and that will limit it to 12 years in the Senate. Now for House of Representatives, they only have 2 years, 2-year terms. Now that's a very short term, which is good in a way, but I think they should because they're so short of a term. You need to have like more terms for them to actually be able to do anything in the House. So I was thinking more maybe you give House members of the House of Representatives 4 terms, 4 terms that they can have in Congress. Now, I think that's good because it also matches up with the maximum amount of time a president can be in office, which is 8 years. So, because 4 times 8 and 4 times 2 is 8, so it matches up with the president. And then that will just be good in the first place. Now, the question is whether you should allow someone to become a House of Representative members and then fulfill their 4 terms there, and then they run to become senators. I'm thinking you should also allow that. But the reason I would say not is because you're still in Congress, and that will make a total of 20 years in Congress. That's a quarter of someone's life, and that's a really long time still. But you are in a different position, so maybe we should allow that to where they can run 8 years in the House of Representatives and 2 terms in Senate. So, yeah, I think we should do that too. We should allow that. But that will like somewhat balance it to where you can't stay in Congress forever. You got to move on. You actually have to change your political position and not stay entrenched within our political system, which will greatly help with less corruption and more ideas coming into the Congress. Also, it might actually strengthen the legislature. As I talked in like the previous video, the legislature right now is very weak in terms of power compared to the executive branch. And I think this would actually strengthen it, because now if you get more new people in there, it will allow them to have more ideas and maybe speed up the political process, and thus allowing the legislature to more easily check the executive in comparison to how much power the executive has right now, which I think will also be very good for it. So I just thought of that argument right now. Additionally, like the thing is, the issue with getting like the term limits in there is that every member of Congress, they don't want term limits. They have an incentive not to because they want to get reelected again and again and again. So they're not going to vote for a bill, a constitutional amendment that enforces term limits, which is going to be, if we ever want that to happen, we would have to have like a massive popular movement for it. And I think that's popular enough right now. The thing is, we're so distracted by so many other issues. I think a majority of Democrats and Republicans support term limits on Congress. But because of the fact that Democrats and Republicans are so divided on so many issues, they never actually focus on the people in power and how they have the people in power that have been in Congress for like years. They more focus on the immediate policy issues. Like, for example, I think the trans issue, is one of the major things that are distracting from a lot of the bigger issues, which I think affects our political system today. And it's sad that Republicans and Democrats agree on certain things, but because we're so divided, we can never actually support those measures in government. So we need someone or a group of people that are like that are within both parties that support term limits. Again, the issue is that they don't have congressional people don't have an incentive to actually support term limits. So it's going to be an issue because you can also never trust the people that you're voting for. Because, again, they also have a vested interest in keeping the term limits gone. There's no term limits. They want there to be no term limits. So it's going to be really hard to get anyone that supports term limits into Congress and get them to actually vote and put the constitutional amendment in effect. But I think that's actually one of the major places we can actually work with Democrats on is term limits. Term limits, term limits, term limits. Because the people on the people on the Democrat side and the Republican side all want term limits. So we should work with them on that. The issue is that, again, we're so divided, and I dislike that because it's getting in the way of us actually passing anything that's actually good for the country, which is sad. But overall, yeah. Now I got a little sidetracked there, but I'm just overall glad that Nancy Pelosi is finally gone. And hopefully we can move forward and eventually stop people like this, which are clearly corrupt, and people like this that have been in there forever. We should eventually get term limits. I don't know when, though, when we can do that. We really us as like the younger generation just really needs to push this issue in particular, and not get distracted by the other issues too. So yeah, we just need to get rid of that, and we also need to stop corruption. So overall, just really glad that Nancy Pelosi's out, but we still have many other problems that we need to do and that we need to solve, particularly within the legislature. So thank you for listening, everyone, and I will probably see you tomorrow. Yeah, I probably will. So thank you. Bye.